With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yulana Weeks.
Our top stories.
Taiwan ambassador tours JNF, reviews donated equipment and funded projects. Cleon Stapleton Simmons attributes public outrage over special sustainability zones and Nevis Southlands to lack of education and information.
Additional discounted VAT day and 0% VAT on school supplies announced. Disaster management official explore profound role of social services in dissection of Hurricane Beryl recovery. Grenada's youth ministry investing in grassroots development to boost the capacity and sustainability of community-led organizations. Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley calls for regional response to perils of fake news and disinformation. Internationally, Israel begins Gaza City operation as nearly 1 million Palestinians face forced displacement. Now, the details.
The Director of Health Institutions in the Ministry of Health of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Jensen Morton, praised Taiwan's continued support for the Federation's health sector, noting that Taiwan's contributions have greatly benefited both the hospital and patient care. The remarks came as the Taiwan ambassador Edward Tao made his first official visit to the hospital on August 20, 2025, under the guidance of Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Curtis Martin, and Dr. Jensen Morton. The ambassador reviewed equipment and projects being funded under Taiwan's assistance, including the Mental Health Service System Enhancement Plan and the upgrade of the physical and mental ward facilities. Speaking to WINN FM, Dr. Morton mentioned,
as it was stated, both myself in my capacity as director and Mr. Martin is in his capacity as PS. We welcomed the new ambassador and he was taken on a tour of the facility. We, of course, pointed out the multiple areas of the hospital that Taiwan has been key in its support of us with. This includes the refurbishment of the psychiatric ward, that's one. Assistance with regards to the back wing of the hospital, which should be starting soon. Their assistance with regards to the roofs of all of the wards of the hospital. It was Taiwan that did the most recent upgrade of the roofs, and it was done very well because we were able to weather the recent heavy rains, and all of the areas that the Taiwanese would have redone, they were able to hold up very well. They were able to see the pieces of equipment that they would have donated to us, including 2 therapy machines. That's FIRAPY. That's 2 therapy machines. Those are machines that are used to assist patients with procedures that involve blood vessels, veins, and arteries.
The Director of Health Institutions also told WINN FM that Taiwan's partnership goes beyond medical equipment donations, extending to long-term investments such as a digitization system and knowledge exchange.
Even though it wasn't shown, they have assisted us in the past with our attempts at digitization. That also was highlighted in the trip. And of course, over the years, they've donated all kinds of stuff like laptops. They've donated things for the blood bank in the past, and so on.
Dr. Morton revealed that the Taiwan ambassador was pleased with the cleanliness of the facility, organization, and outpatient response times during his tour of the facility. This comes amid some concerns locally that outpatient wait times have been a challenge. The visit formed a part of Taiwan's ongoing commitment to strengthening the country's healthcare system through financial support and technical cooperation. Dr. Morton expressed that Ambassador Tao's visit was successful. He welcomed the continued collaboration between St. Kitts and Nevis and Taiwan, describing Taiwan as a reliable and valued partner in ensuring health needs and quality care are provided more efficiently to the public. Opposition member of the Nevis Island Assembly, Cleon Stapleton Simmons, suggested that much of the public outrage surrounding the special sustainability zone and the soliciting of lands in the south of Nevis stems from a lack of education and proper information. During her August 19 appearance on Talk That Gets Results, the MP explained that perhaps many residents do not fully understand the concept, leading to anxiety and uneasiness.
I would perhaps say uneasiness about the whole idea of the special sustainability zone and the whole land issue. And I think what is perhaps causing that anxiety and somewhat uneasiness is lack of awareness and perhaps lack of education. So I think we don't know a lot about what's taking place on the south side. We don't know the intentions. What we do know is that there have been a number of persons who own land, and I must say that the majority of the lands in that particular area in the vicinity from Long Point to Saddle Hill, they are privately owned lands, and we know that a number of persons have been approached by different persons and made offers to sell their land. And so the question then become, well, why? Why should I sell my land? You know, what is taking place? What is happening?
Some people are viewing the special sustainability zones as exclusive areas that do not benefit locals. According to Stapleton Simmons, while people are raising questions, much of the backlash could be addressed if government officials provided clear, accessible explanations about the objectives and potential benefits of the initiative.
I think a lot of times we see a lot of movements taking place in Nevis, and a lot of it is just somewhat hearsay, shoo-shoo, but the powers that be not really coming out and addressing the issue or making the public aware as to what are the intentions, if it is that we have investors who are interested in developing the southern side of the island, and perhaps, you know, there should be greater awareness to the public by way of information as to what are the intentions, what are the plans. And with the lack of that, the lack of information, it creates anxiety. It put people, you know, make people uneasy. It gives them discomfort because, of course, everyone wants to know, and that is the big question, you know, what is taking place.
Quite a number of people have echoed similar sentiments, noting that residents feel left out of the discussion. The issue remains a point of contention as the government of St. Kitts and Nevis passed the Special Sustainability Zone Authorization Bill 2025 on August 11.
Last week, the federal government in the National Parliament passed a piece of legislation. I think there has been discussions in Parliament as well as in the public arena pertaining to the sustainability agenda, the development goals, and the government trying to achieve the goal of getting to a sustainable state. And so this is part, I believe, of that broader agenda where we are now looking at putting some legislative framework in place when it comes to dealing with resources, and especially economic resources, and land is one of the major economic resources, because of course we all know we cannot have any development without actually having land, access to land. And so I believe that one of the issues are what perhaps would have been more meaningful is if the government, the stakeholders, perhaps investors, persons from the private sector who has an interest in these particular developments, if there were some education beforehand, just to educate people and give them that sense of awareness as to the intentions of any development that is likely to take place in the future.
Premier of Nevis Mark Brantley declared publicly that he has no formal proposal from any investor to develop the lands in the south, but the parliamentarian said she believes an informal discussion was had.
The Premier, as Naya has said, indicated that he has not had any formal proposal from any investor who has any desire or intention to put any project in that particular area. But again, despite his comments, I note that he used the word formal, but I believe that there has been perhaps some informal discussions, and that is the reason why we are seeing this particular activity taking place, where a number of persons are being approached to purchase land.
While the bill provides that special sustainability zones will attract investment and create jobs, opponents stress that without proper transparency, it will continue to face resistance from a skeptical public.
The government of St. Kitts and Nevis has announced an additional back-to-school discounted value-added tax VAT day. The discounted VAT rate day is scheduled for August 23, 2025. The additional day was scheduled because of the passage of Hurricane Erin, which saw the Federation experiencing some stormy conditions that impeded customers from fully utilizing the day. The value-added tax on eligible goods will be reduced from the standard 17% to a significantly lower 5%. This offers a substantial opportunity for families to save on various purchases just in time for the new academic year. The Inland Revenue Department, IRD, emphasized that the reduced 5% VAT applies to tangible goods that are in stock and issued or delivered on the VAT day to qualify. Pre-orders and items not available for immediate delivery will not be eligible. Certain items are excluded from the VAT reduction to ensure public safety and regulatory compliance. These include guns and ammunition, cigarettes and tobacco products, alcoholic beverages such as wine, brandy, vodka, rum, beer, Guinness, Carib, and Smirnoff Ice, and vehicles. Adding to the relief, from July 1st to September 30th, 2025, specific school supplies will benefit from 0% discounted VAT rate. This extended tax break aims to provide families with extra budgetary room as they prepare for the new school year. The comprehensive list of school supplies eligible for 0% of VAT includes exercise books, textbooks, geometry sets, rulers, T-squares, school uniforms, school bags, pens, pencils, crayons, markers, highlighters, erasers, pencil sharpeners, glue sticks, dictionaries, folder leaf, graph paper, calculators, lunchboxes, book binders, and plastic book covers, amongst others. The upcoming VAT-reduced days follow the temporary VAT reduction from 17% to 13% implemented for the first 6 months of 2025, which the Inland Revenue Department noted has had a positive impact on commercial activity and consumer sentiment. The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, of St. Kitts and Nevis, on a recent edition of From Danger to Safety, focused intensely on lessons from Hurricane Beryl, the critical role of social services. The discussion illuminated the multifaceted and indispensable contributions of social services in both immediate disaster response and long-term recovery efforts, extending beyond the provision of basic necessities to encompass crucial psychosocial support and the arduous task of community rebuilding. The dialogue underscored the imperative for integrated strategies that prioritize human well-being alongside physical infrastructure restoration. Chrissy Worm-Charles, Grenada's Director of Social Development, offered a raw and insightful personal and professional reflection on the widespread devastation wrought by Hurricane Beryl across Carriacou and Petite Martinique. She detailed the profound impact on communities and elaborated on the pivotal role her team played in the subsequent recovery.
Okay, so Hurricane Beryl placed us in a precarious position in some ways, right? Personally, it affected me in relation to, remembering the different disasters and so forth that has passed through Grenada. So more or less the residual impression of COVID-19, right, in terms of our country's response to crisis and disaster management. So that was on the forefront of my mind. But at the same time, one has to center themselves and look at the particular situation and do the necessaries to ensure that the proper interventions are made. So to a certain extent, I was a bit nervous. But I think that was expected in relation to any disasters or so forth. Knowing what would have happened to Grenada in 2004 and 2005. So I was a bit apprehensive. But nonetheless, was able to ride the storm.
Worm-Charles articulated the dual responsibility she and her team held, shifting seamlessly between leadership and frontline social work.
My role really was to lead the ministry in different spaces, and also too, all boots literally was on the ground. Right, so yes, I was the director for social development, but most importantly, I was a part of the human service organization. So I had to revert to certain roles as being a social worker too as well, providing that type of support where it needs to be, and also in developing programs to ensure that the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique and the northern part of the country received the necessary support that they have to, so that they can, return to happiness and, basically return to normalcy as much as they can.
The director further elaborated on the vital impact of direct economic interventions such as cash transfers.
Yes, we provided immediate cash transfer to people. So now they had the economic power, right, to purchase whatever is necessary, just, to sustain them for that brief period, that relief. So we saw that direct impact, people having that spending power to access the necessary goods, to provide a proper meal for themselves and even to administer some of the medical protocol. That was critical. because in Karakou, access to cash was a little bit limited because the banks and so forth were down.
Warm Charles also candidly addressed the significant psychological toll of the disaster.
There were some challenges. I think trauma affects so many different people. So, for example, some of our clients in Karakou, they were affected tremendously. They were traumatized, and it took them a little while to rebound and to come back to normalcy. And even our caregivers, oftentimes we place a lot of emphasis on the people who are most affected and not necessarily the professionals, right? But we saw that in Karakou, the professionals really took, a hit, right? And it was a challenge. Developing strong social protection systems that factor in that key component, providing care for the carers.
She concluded by emphasizing emerging opportunities and the critical importance of regional solidarity.
So it's good opportunities too as well as we move together as a nation and as a region towards our responses towards disasters. Lessons learned, the gaps that we have experienced, as a ministry, in terms of providing adequate support in a timely manner and so forth. Those are good lessons. And as I said before, government would have taken necessary initiative in expanding some of our human resources. Small but, sure steps, because we have to be conscious that we work within a fiscal space that is limited, right? So those are lessons learned, but we have also seen action coming out of those lessons. So it's not just only a talk shop, right? But it's actually translated into human service growth, and also to within the region to just the same. Lessons learned. Caribbean people standing together, rising together, learning from the lessons that Grenada probably would have experienced, the gaps that Grenada would have experienced. So therefore, when they're building the social protection system, it's supposed to be building back better. Why? Because of the lessons learned and the challenges. So it really, to me, it's part of an entire picture, the entire scope of our experiences, not just limited to Grenada, but it extends to the Caribbean. So you're not reinventing the wheel, right, when it comes to disaster response. So lesson well learned, opportunity well presented, and together as a society and a community, we shall grow.
This comprehensive approach highlights the profound commitment to not only rebuilding, but also strengthening societal resilience through dedicated social services. In regional news, Grenada's youth ministry investing in grassroots development to boost the capacity and sustainability of community-led organizations, Grenada Broadcasting Network reports.
The Ministry of Youth continues its efforts to empower grassroots organizations with a renewed focus on strengthening the impact of community-led groups through targeted training in organizational development and capacity building. Representatives from both existing and emerging community groups across all parishes came together in a recently held training session to gain practical strategies and tools to help grow and sustain their organizations. The sessions, part of the ministry's ongoing support program, was designed to build leadership, structure, and long-term viability among youth-driven initiatives. The training was led by development specialist Keisha Mitchell, who emphasized the importance of core values in organizational success.
So we have community organizations within all parishes in Grenada, but we want to ensure that they function effectively so that they are able to have impact within the communities. So today we provided them with information, tips, strategies on how to grow the organizations. Now, some organizations are already in existence, and you have others that are just about, to get started. So we touched a lot on developing their purpose, understanding their purpose, looking at their vision, what it is that they are trying to achieve, what does the future look like for the organizations, and what it is that the organizations are really about, understanding the mission, understanding how to actually identify needs within the community.
Mitchell expressed confidence in the potential of the participating groups, noting that she anticipates measurable progress in the months ahead as participants begin applying the knowledge and skills gained during the sessions.
I believe that you can expect to see some changes and some broad-based impact within the communities with some of the goals that they would come up with, some of the issues that they would want to address within the community. Of course, we do understand that they would not be able to address all of the problems or the needs of the community, but those that are aligned particularly to their purpose, that they would be able to provide that kind of support. And where they are not able to do that directly, but they are able to leverage support and collaborate with other groups and with other institutions to do.
Participants also shared their experiences, highlighting how the training is already shifting their perspectives on leadership and planning.
My name is Kevin George, and I'm a member of the Rotaract Club of Grenada East. My expectations coming into this training session today was that I would receive the necessary tools necessary to be able to contribute towards my team in terms of team building and executing of projects. In addition to that, I expected to learn a lot more about how we can receive funding and grants that will be able to help us in our projects, in the execution of our projects. Thank you.
So what I would have learned here, one of the key takeaways from this session was conflict resolution, how you go about dealing with certain problems or certain issues that the members of the group might be facing. A group or any organization, it's not about you, but also to take into consideration what the other members think, their values, the ideas, suggestion, whatever, and you come together as a group to execute in the best way possible.
The takeaway for me is that as leaders, we must identify our strengths and also identify the strengths of the other persons in your organization, and in that way you're able to position them in the right capacities so that you can get maximum success from what.
Christina John, GBN News.
Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley calls for regional response to perils of fake news and disinformation. ABS Antigua has that story.
Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley is calling for an urgent regional response to combat fake news, proposing the establishment of a Caribbean-wide truth and verification mechanism. Speaking at the Caribbean Broadcasting Union's annual General Assembly on Tuesday, Mottley warned that false information threatens the very foundations of Caribbean democracy.
I believe the time has come for us to have a regional truth and verification mechanism that allows us to have local nodes but is managed at the regional level in order to get the benefit of the economies of scale.
The Prime Minister warned that fake news poses a real threat to Caribbean democracies, comparing the challenge to the Rwanda genocide, where media was used to destabilize society.
The presence of fake news, benignly created or maliciously created, it matters not. But its capacity to destabilize individuals, communities, and countries is now very, very real.
Mottley acknowledged the cost of establishing such a system, but stressed that the cost of doing without such protection would be far greater.
It has long been said that if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And if you think this truth and validation mechanism or verification mechanism is expensive, try doing without it. We are already seeing people leaning to more sexy and sensational communication, but sexy and sensational without a factual basis. And in those circumstances, as my grandfather would say to us, if you give a lie a head start, you have hell to catch it. And even if damages are available, the damage is done.
The proposal comes as regional leaders grapple with artificial intelligence's ability to create convincing fake content, including putting words in people's mouth through manipulated images. Samantha Simon, ABS News.
We now bring you these international reports.
The Republican-controlled State House in Texas has passed the new congressional maps, which they hope will deliver them 5 extra seats at next year's midterm elections. It's a hugely controversial move, which has sparked battles over redistricting across the country. In California, Democrats are moving to carve up their state map in retaliation. In other Republican states like Indiana, Missouri and Florida, they too are talking about tweaking congressional maps to create more Republican-controlled seats. So what does it mean for politics in the United States? Well, I'm joined by David Goodman, Houston bureau chief of the New York Times, who's been following this story. Thanks for being with us, David. We have sort of boundary changes as well, but it's supposed to be controlled in the UK according to population. Can you just explain briefly the process in the US?
Well, thanks for having me. In the United States, it actually varies by state. And the state legislatures are able to set the boundaries in many cases, and that becomes a partisan political project. Now, normally this happens only after the once-a-decade census, where the population numbers are adjusted, and you sort of figure out where the lines are supposed to go, because in the House of Representatives, each member is meant to represent the same number of people. There's a one-person, one-vote principle. But some states like California previously had independent commissions do it, more like I guess they have it done in the UK. But here, a lot of states still have state legislatures do this in a partisan manner. And what we're seeing now is sort of that taken to its extreme. So Texas is very blatantly going out and saying, we're going to do this, redraw these lines to get as much Republican advantage as we can. These are Republican leaders of the state who are doing it. And that's been a challenge now to these Democratic states who are looking to counter it, but have roadblocks that they've put in place to try and take politics out of it. Now they're trying to put the politics back in.
And just tell us about California.
Yeah, so California has been the state that's been most ready to respond to what Texas is doing. And Governor Gavin Newsom in California put forward a proposal that would try and get around the state's independent commission. So there they have a commission in their state constitution that's supposed to draw the lines. What Gavin Newsom has done is get the Democratic legislature there to put forward a new plan that would draw 5 new Democratic districts to counteract the 5 that Texas has drawn. But they have to bring that plan actually to the voters. So what's going to happen in California is they're going to vote it out of the legislature. Probably Democrats think they have the votes to do that. But then it's actually going to go on the ballot in November. And the voters will have a chance to decide whether they actually want to make this change to their constitution on a temporary basis in order to counteract what's been done in Texas. So the California situation is a lot more protracted and a lot more uncertain than what's been happening in Texas.
For a country that's supposed to be the world's most powerful democracy, this all looks a bit bewildering, I'm going to be honest. What do you think it means overall for what's coming up in the midterms?
Well, that is the ultimate goal here. And Donald Trump, President Trump, has been very explicit that what he's after is to hold on to control of the U.S. House for Republicans. Now, Republicans have a very narrow margin in the House, and if he were to lose it in the midterms, which is very possible because often the party out of power does take control in those midterm elections, if he were to lose that control, he's worried that Democrats would then stymie his agenda, but also they could launch investigations to just make his life a lot more difficult. So what this is all about is Donald Trump trying to maintain control of the U.S. House, and Republicans in the states going along with this plan because they too, want to see his agenda pushed forward and not blocked by Democrats. So this is a very raw partisan fight over the U.S. House of Representatives that's playing out in each of these state houses all over the country.
So, I mean, is literally every state now looking at this, or is potential change focused in certain parts of the country?
Well, yeah, not every state can actually do something about this in the time it would take to affect the midterm elections. So you have discrete places where they're looking to do this. So California is one, as we've said, Texas. Missouri, as just said, Donald Trump said today, actually, that Missouri is going to be looking at it. Indiana, the Republicans are trying to get Indiana to go along with that. And Democrats, for their part, are looking at New York. New York would be complicated because they couldn't actually get anything in place before 2026. But Illinois is another place where Democrats have looked at. The trouble is a lot of these states are already pretty gerrymandered, pretty cut up to benefit one party or the other. So the different parties are looking at states that have a lot of population and have a lot of seats that belong to the other party and thinking, how can we cut these states up differently so that our party has a greater advantage?
Israel's military says it has begun the first stages of an operation to seize Gaza City. But it had already intensified its attacks on the area for days now. For many, safety has become an illusion, and constant displacement has become the norm. Israel is now planning to forcibly displace nearly 1 million Palestinians to concentration zones in the south.
Last time I was displaced to the south, but this time there is no possibility for me to move because our displacement is death. Let's face it with honor next to our homes. Displacement will have consequences more than safety. There is no safety anyways.
No corner of Gaza is spared. From the north to the south, everyone is at risk. The scene in Deir el-Balah in central Gaza. An Israeli strike hit a makeshift displacement camp, leaving people with no shelter once again.
This is my tent. Within 3 minutes, they told us to evacuate, and I got the children out. People, women, babies, elderly, they all evacuated. This is our situation. Those tents were great. We were living here, happy. This is the area they said was safe. I've been displaced from one place to another, from north to central of the Gaza Strip, and then here. We are tired. We are tired.
Flour bags now carry people's belongings. And what little food they had is now destroyed. Across the Strip, survival has become a struggle. Israel's strikes, lack of food, and constant threat of forced displacement have made life unbearable for Palestinians. Lina Abu Akleh, Al Jazeera.
Microsoft's head of artificial intelligence says he is alarmed by the rising cases of a phenomenon dubbed as AI psychosis. It's a non-clinical term used to describe those who rely so heavily on chatbots, such as Copilot or ChatGPT, that they become convinced something imaginary is real. Zoe Kleiman reports.
Hugh from Scotland says he became convinced that he was about to become a multimillionaire after turning to an AI chatbot to help him when he lost his job. It began by giving him practical advice, but ended up telling him that a book and a movie about his experience would make him more than £5 million.
The more information that I give the chatbot, the more it would say, "Oh, this treatment's terrible. You should really be getting more than this." And it would ask me for more information. I would feed it more, and the number would just get higher and higher. It would go from 10 grand to into the millions, basically.
Hugh already had mental health problems and ended up having a breakdown. He says taking medication made him realise the money wasn't real. He doesn't blame the technology. He says it signposted citizens' advice, but he ignored it because it was so convincing.
AI psychosis is a non-clinical term to describe people who start using chatbots like ChatGPT, Grok and Claude and start to lose touch with reality. I've had messages from people convinced that the tech has fallen in love with them, or think they've unlocked a secret human inside it, or even think it's deliberately trying to harm them.
A survey of 2,000 UK adults carried out for Bangor University's Emotional AI Lab found that 57% thought it was strongly inappropriate for the tech to identify as a real person if asked. But 49% thought the use of voice was appropriate to make chatbots sound more engaging. 20% thought children under the age of 18 shouldn't use AI at all.
We as professionals and doctors may start having to ask people when we see them in clinic how much AI they're using, how it's affecting their lives, just like we would for smoking, alcohol. We already know what ultra-processed foods can do to the body. And I think with this ultra-processed information, we're going to get an avalanche of ultra-processed minds that we need to deal with.
The advice is to make sure you double-check everything a chatbot tells you and don't stop talking to real people. Finally, if you feel like you're using AI to make all your decisions for you, think about taking a step back. Zoe Kleiman, BBC News.
When the storm arrived, Maria Lima and her children were forced to jump out of the window to escape. That's after Cape Verde's São Vicente Island was hit by considerably more rain in just a few hours than they'd usually expect to see in a whole year.
We couldn't save our belongings, but we managed to save my life and my children's lives. Now we'll see what to do with our lives. I hope our lives improve, especially mine and my children's, because we are disoriented, without living conditions, without anything.
The West African Archipelago's Meteorology Institute said around 7.5 inches fell over 5 hours last week. That's compared to an annual average of about 4.5 inches. The deluge claimed at least 8 lives and displaced around 1,500 people. Emergency services were overwhelmed and key roads, including access to the airport, were cut off. Agnello Ambrosio says he couldn't believe the rain came in such quantities. He stayed at his home, now draped with clothes that are still drying, trying to bail out the water on his own.
The water level was up there, almost a metre high, almost a metre of water. Everything there was below the water level. Thankfully, I was able to get out of here.
The flood came just 8 months after the World Bank published a comprehensive report warning of Cape Verde's growing climate risks. It highlighted increasing vulnerability to floods, droughts and rising sea levels, particularly given its tourism-dependent economy. An International Monetary Fund assessment last year estimated that Cape Verde's annual climate-related disaster losses already average about 1% of GDP, with a sharp increase in recorded disasters in recent years. And what that might mean for the residents of São Vicente as they pick up the pieces of their lives is dark clouds on the horizon and an uncertain future shaped by climate change.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
Taiwan Ambassador tours at JNF, reviews donated equipment and funded projects. Cleon Stapleton Simmons attributes public outrage over special sustainability zones and Nevis Southlands to lack of education and information.
Additional discounted VAT day and 0% VAT on school supplies announced. Disaster management official explore profound role of social services in dissection of Hurricane Beryl recovery. Grenada's youth ministry investing in grassroots development to boost the capacity and sustainability of community-led organizations. Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley calls for regional response to perils of fake news and disinformation. Internationally, Israel begins Gaza City operation as nearly 1 million Palestinians face forced displacement.
Thank you for listening.